Hi, I'm Amanda.
And I'm Allison.
Welcome to another episode of Simply Sapphic. Hello, and welcome to another episode of Simply Sapphic. I'm Amanda.
And I'm Allison.
And we are so excited to have you join us today for another episode. If you are super new here, we are a podcast that talks about everything we wish we knew when we came out of the closet. And if you are returning, thank you for coming back for another episode.
Hooray.
That is a huge compliment. We're so glad you don't think our jokes are
Welcome.
lame.
Yeah. And if you do think they're lame, thank you for dealing with them.
Thank you for everyone who's commenting and interacting with our social medias. It really means a lot to us. If you want to join our newsletter to get an email every time we publish a new episode, as well as some behind the scenes content and what we're reading, what we're doing, you can sign up for our newsletter at simplysapphic.com. There's a little form that you can sign up for in the top of the website, and we are so excited every single time somebody signs up. I literally will tell Allison, I'm like, somebody sign up.
It's true.
It's like
It's like 3 a.m. No, I'm kidding.
Oh my god! What if I woke up every time and I was
you could feel it in your body. You're like, somebody signed up for the newsletter. That'd be amazing.
Yes, that would be amazing. We love doing this podcast. It is one of the joys and challenges of our life. It's a really good challenge. It's a really fun challenge. And all we want to do with this podcast is give back to the community that helped us grow into the queer Sapphic people that we are. And so if you're here, if you're queer, if you're not queer, we welcome you, and you are super welcome here. And
give us a little 5-star rating. In Spotify, if you're listening on Spotify, unless you're driving, give us a nice little 5 stars. A nice little click. It helps us a lot. It helps us spread the word and all that good stuff. Or if you are a YouTube person, subscribe to our channel, because you can literally see what we look like, and you can see the cat and the space, and you can check out the books we have and all that good stuff.
Yeah, it really means a lot. Any affirmations you can give us helps us keep going. Obviously, we wouldn't do this without you guys. And so, yeah, let's jump into our episode. We are super excited to have Celia here to talk about some fun stuff today.
Yeah.
We are talking about how to navigate difficult family situations.
Really fun.
Really
super fun.
Super silly. We're just going to be laughing.
Great way to spend your day thinking about all of that. But it's so nice to be here. Y'all are so sweet, and it's just fun to get to talk about this topic.
Yes. And it's so it's just so, I think it's just so necessary. It's one of our biggest questions we get. And it's just something that I feel like you meet and everybody has a question about, how do I handle my mom?
Because
how do I
nobody
handle my
talks
dad?
about it. There's not a script. There's not courses you can take on how do I deal with an unaffirming family. And we were so excited when we saw your practice, because you're a therapist and you're a queer therapist. And so the fact that you help people through these kinds of situations, and we talked earlier about you do have clients who are going through stuff like this.
Yeah.
And so we're just really excited to talk to you about some tools that our listeners can use to handle things when they get difficult or unaffirming, or
possibly entering into a situation where they're going to come out to
Right.
people who may not be affirming.
So many of us don't have an example in our lives. When we come out, we haven't seen somebody else in our lives do that, right?
Yeah.
So we don't have an example. We don't have a guide. So we end up having to find the resources and information on our own. That's why I'm in love with y'all's podcast, because you're making it accessible for people and free. And sometimes it's hard to find that information. So I'm grateful that the two of you exist, and I'm glad to be here.
Yay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So-
That means a lot.
To kick it off, we're just wondering if you just tell the folks a little bit about you,
Sure.
what you do, what you're passionate about, all that good stuff.
Yeah, I love that. So my name is Celia Lugo. Who am I? I am a proud Boricua, which is a pride term for Puerto Rican.
Yes.
I'm queer. I'm fat. I am a psychotherapist or a mental health therapist here in town, and I have a small group practice where we focus on providing inclusive trauma therapy to folks of all identities. What else can I say? I have 11 nibblings between my wife and I, so many of them, and it's super fun to spend time with them and be with them. And really, what am I passionate about? I am trying to live the most liberated life that I can.
Work.
and help others do the same.
Yes.
So I get to do that in a really fun way by being a therapist.
Yes. See,
Yeah.
welcome to this episode. What a way to
Yes.
start this.
Yeah, what a stacked resume.
Oh, thank you.
Honestly.
Just so cool. What is your practice's name for people that might
That's
be
right.
like, hey-oh?
That's right. It's called Sanctuary Counseling. And so it's me and two other folks right now who I adore. So you can't go wrong if you want to come see us and connect with us, where we love to chat and have some intro calls and see if it's a good fit.
Do you accept people outside of Texas, or is this Texas only?
That's a good question. It is Texas only,
Okay.
and that is a limit by our licensures. It's just how it is. But if we're not a good fit, or if you're out of Texas, we can provide resources.
There we
So
go.
that's another fun part of my job, is like, hey, I'm not exactly the right fit for you, but let me help you find what is. Yeah.
Beautiful. So for our non-Texas folk, don't be afraid to reach out. If after this
Totally.
episode you're like, hello, yes, I absolutely want to like pursue these resources, like they're here for you.
So today we're talking about complicated family situations, and I'm curious if you can kick us off by kind of explaining why queer family relationships are so uniquely difficult, and kind of like a little bit of context around that.
Yeah. It's a big question that's like steeped in history, right? We can think about that most of us were raised in like a homogenous, heteronormative context, where most of our families, not all, but most of them, were not affirming of queerness, right? And probably afraid of it. And so I like to think about it like this idea that there's one right way to be. That comes from capitalism, it comes from colonialism, it comes from white supremacy culture. But we're all swimming in those waters of there's one right way to be. So, with our families believing that, when we choose to be a different way, it's terrifying to them. And they want to do anything that they can, sometimes, a lot of times, to bring us back to that one right way to be. And that ends up being really harmful to us. Yeah, I'll stop there. How's that?
No, that's great, because like there's something that like all those practices are also so rooted in fear.
Yeah.
You know, so then they see something that's different than the path that they've been told that will give them the best life possible, and then there's like a fear reaction to it of like, oh no, this perfect life that I need to have could be going away.
Yeah.
And it's really fascinating, but it's also like it's bringing that on such a personal level when you've known someone your whole life and then you bring that fear in. Like, I don't know, it's just so, it's complicated and it's hard because there's so many feelings and emotions tied into it because you love these people maybe, you know, but they're so grappled and held onto by this fear.
Absolutely. And I like to think of it like there are all these fantasies that your family and your parents have about the kind of person you will be and the kind of life you will lead and the kind of life they will have. And so, yeah, it's disruptive to be like, that's not going to happen.
Yeah.
And actually, the life I want to live doesn't match your fantasy about the life you thought I would live. So that's disruptive. And I want to say disruption is important for liberation. So it's disruptive and it should be.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Oh, yeah.
Super. I mean, it's interesting because you have, on the flip side, when you don't have a family situation or difficult family situation, in the end, it's like, oh, I'm like, by existing, I am opening my family up to new ways of living, new ways of being that they weren't introduced to. Like my family, my parents are like of the baby boomer, like they're boomers. And I think about like their one way of being after the war and like everything they're going through culturally, right? It's like, oh, you need to be homogenous. You need to be like acting a certain way in society in order to survive. And so when people come out and you break that, they're like, oh God, what do you do? And then by being queer, you are actively breaking this like framework that people have in their heads of like, you can actually survive and be happy and be healthy and like thrive outside of these boxes that we are in, like are taught in school. Like we are like actively conditioned to be a certain way. And so, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, yeah. I mean, when you're assigned your sex at birth, then you get put in the box and sort of that pathway to be socialized a certain way, right? And then you have this expected map of what your life should be. I think it's even complicated when I think about my family, and we're part of the Puerto Rican diaspora, so that meaning that we moved to the States, right? There's all this pressure to assimilate. So there are these, I think, for any queer or trans person, anyone who falls in our LGBTQ family, there is that pressure to come back to being in that one right way to be.
Yeah.
And then we decide not to, and we get liberated. So
Yeah, I think it's because my experience with my family is deeply religious, Christian, non-dom, like borderline evangelical, and so much of it comes from faith-based of you're going to do whatever you can do to avoid going to hell. And that was very much ingrained in us. You got to live Christ-like, because if you don't, there is a consequence at the end of it. The whole like, we have a loving God but a just God. And it was fascinating because my queerness in that, I had to retrain myself to be like, I don't think my queerness is sending me to hell. I don't think it's going to happen. I actually believe I'm going to heaven, or whatever that looks like. I don't think that there's a consequence to this. And watching my family's reaction to that was like earth shattering. They were like, you're a liar. This is a false prophecy. You're being taught wrong. Which I'm like, that's wild that you look at your own child and go, you're damned.
wow.
Right? And I'm like, but also they're doing that because they're like, but I have to do this. I have to tell you this because we love you and we need you to avoid this. And it's fascinating to have to try to fit in that way, because my life felt it was at stake for so much. It was like, I have to blend in, I have to do this right, and I have to live this certain way, or else I'm going to hell. I believed, and we've talked about this in other episodes, but I was a full believer that when I had sex with somebody of the same sex for the first time, I thought God was going to kill me. I thought I was going to get out of the sky like a lightning bolt, like pa-bam.
Yes.
And then it didn't happen. And that was like liberating. I remember I called my friend and I was like, I didn't die. And she was like, we know you were never going to. Welcome. How does it feel? And I was like, I don't think I can ever see life the same way ever again. I think these consequences don't exist.
But it's hard because, like, your family, those are the people who raised you. Those are the people who love you. And when they say, like, you're hurting us, like, of course you have so much love in your heart. You're like, oh my God, like, am I going to hell? Am I damned? Like, I believe you because I've believed everything you've told me since I was a baby. And so that's what I feel like is the root of, like, I mean, combined with what you were saying, Celia, is like the root of like why family situations are so hard. Because if somebody wrongs me that's not my family, I can easily just be like, okay, cut off. Like, my boundaries were broken and overstepped, so I'm going to cut you out. But when it's family, it's like so much more complicated.
There's so much to say here, but I want to notice when you were talking that there is a sense of entitlement that especially religious family members can have, because the thought is you will be in eternal death or eternal hell if I don't say something to you. And so there's a sense of entitlement that I can really tell you whatever I need to in order to save your soul, no matter how damaging it is. And that is really harmful.
And it gets packaged as love.
Yes.
And then I think it leaves our queer family who come from those backgrounds having really complicated views on what love is. I know for me, I spent about 3 years very adamantly believing there was no such thing as unconditional love. And from that experience, I very adamantly, I was like, this is the people that taught me how to love. They gave me a beautiful childhood. And if this is how they react to me, then everyone's love around me is conditional. And that's the queer world that I entered into with that pressure. And that's, I think, why we want to talk about this, because we want to help people not have to feel that way, or to know that, like, though their families may be complicated, they're still so worthy of love, and they're still whole. There's no part of them that's broken, and that they can have a love that isn't based on this conditional entitlement that these people feel that they have. Now, since, like, if we're gonna, like, take it back to, like, step one, what tools do you have for somebody who is like preparing to come out to a family that they're not feeling quite sure is going to be very affirming?
Yeah.
And like, what self-care tools do you have in your pocket for before and even after?
Let's start with knowing when to come out, right? And I think you have a podcast on this.
We do.
We
So
do, but
I
it's good to
won't-
talk about it again.
Right,
Yeah.
right. And you mentioned, I think I heard you mention testing the waters as an important step. And I think that's really the first step, is getting to experience or sort of feeling out how will my family respond to me coming out. And you can do that by, you might already know some of it. Maybe they see queerness on television and they have a reaction or they make comments. And that's one way to know, right? Or they talk about legislation in a certain way that has to do with queer people or trans people, and that's one way to know. So, testing the waters is important. But my big question, am I relatively safe enough to come out in my family? You might even ask yourself, am I at risk of losing support or resources from my family? It can look a little different if you're still living with your family of origin or if you're on your own. So there are different kinds of safety, but I want to think about, are you physically safe? Will you possibly be harmed if you come out? Then you might delay coming out, or until you can differentiate from your family enough and be independent enough that you have enough safety to do that. So that's really important to me. But there's also other kinds of safety too, right? Emotional, psychological, spiritual safety. And that's really nuanced. For some people, you can maybe tolerate a bit more discomfort, and for others, it's devastating or really life altering to have those results or have those responses. So it's going to be nuanced, which we can get into more later.
Yeah, for sure. And yeah, because like I think when you talked about like our resources at risk, like that would be like if they pay for your rent,
Yeah.
if they pay for your car insurance, like if they would turn off your cell phone, things like that. Like those are examples of maybe those resources that you could, that if you're in threat of losing, like maybe hold back for a second until you can pay for your own rent or something.
Exactly. And are there other avenues of support that you could call on? Maybe other supportive family members or resources in your community to help you bridge that so that you can have enough independence to come out safely if you choose to. There's no perfect time, right? Like, there's absolutely no perfect time or situation to come out. It's so individual. And I'll say that it's helpful to have a guide or somebody support you and help you through it, whether it's someone who's been through it before or maybe a therapist or another kind of healing practitioner. It's really helpful to have the ability to talk to someone and make a plan ahead of time.
Oh, I love, because I came out with no plan.
Me either.
Just none. I had no plan, but it's because my girlfriend at the time was pressuring me. She was like, I'm going to out you if you don't, or we're going to break up. And so I was like, okay, I have to do it. One, don't do that, people. If your partner is doing that to you, that doesn't need to be your partner.
You need to leave.
Yeah. But that's something that when I think back, I wish I had a plan. I wish I had like little note cards and maybe like my friends in the background.
Yeah,
You know?
absolutely. I think your plan can look like, where is the safest place or the most comfortable place for me to do this? What's the timing that works for me? That's most comfortable for me. It doesn't have to be about the other person at all.
For our people pleasers.
Yeah,
People that are
I'm
worried
a
about that.
recovering one, so
Yeah.
I hear that.
Yeah.
You're in like company.
Uh-huh, uh-huh. But I think those two things are really, really important. And then I think about beforehand, what do I want to say? You can write it out. You can prepare for that moment. Say what you want to say. You can rehearse it with a friend or a loved one or a partner, right? And then I think a lot about self-soothing beforehand because it's so uncertain for most people. Even if your loved ones and your family are totally queer affirming, it's still nerve-wracking.
Oh yeah, and it's so, I mean, maybe we'll be able to live in a day where that doesn't have to be a thing, but yeah, there's still that like, are you gonna still like me? Yeah, yeah. What are some, like, when we talk about self, oh my goodness gracious.
Self-soothing.
Thank you.
I
Wow.
got you.
I lost it. I was like, onomatopoeia. What are some self-soothing tools?
It's helpful to think through what specifically to me is soothing, because it's going to be different for everyone. There are some basic things that I'll share, but there's some self-exploration to be had, right? So when I think of something that's self-soothing to me, something that maybe brings my heart rate down, that feels pleasurable or good or comforting, and something that helps get me back into my window of tolerance, which is a therapy concept. But that just means I'm not like hyper aroused, super anxious, overwhelmed, or hypo aroused, where I'm like depressed and or numb. I get to be sort of in the middle of that, where I'm maybe not 100%, but I feel okay and I feel present enough with myself. So, some self soothing things that I like, I would say breathing really helps me, deep breathing. Other things would be, for me, meditation. Not everyone's not into that, but being able to be guided by a meditation teacher I trust is helpful. What are some other things? I really like chamomile tea.
Yum.
I like music a lot, so I'll put on some good lo-fi music that helps calm me down. Right? Sometimes it could be lighting a candle. I love to go on walks and look at trees. So it really is particular to you. But you can do some self-exploration and figure out what feels good to me and what comforts me, what soothes me. Make a list, put it on your bathroom mirror, your refrigerator, your cell phone. Be able to access it when you need to.
I love that list. I'm gonna make one. Be right back. Just kidding. But I feel like there's so many different situations that you can use that in, right? So it's like use it before and after doing something really hard, like coming out to your family, but also like when you need to set boundaries with your family. Let's say you still live at home, like getting it self-soothing can help you set those boundaries. And so moving into our next question is like what advice do you have for setting boundaries when you still live with your family, which makes it so hard sometimes because they're in your space.
That's really challenging. And I want to notice that you might be in a circumstance where boundaries are okay in your family and it's something that's practiced regularly and that will make it easier. Or you might be in a situation where boundaries are not a thing. And so it's a really foreign concept that you're bringing in brand new to your family, and it can feel very disruptive. So I always say focus first on is it safe enough for me to set this boundary? And is it a boundary that needs to be spoken, or is it one that I just hold because it's not safe enough for me to say it? Right? Um, but there's a really good book that I'd recommend.
We love book recs.
Yeah,
Go on.
it's called Set Boundaries, Find Peace, I believe, by Nedra Tawwab. And it is like the most, thorough explanation of setting boundaries, the steps to do it, and then in all kinds of situations. So if you like reading books, I definitely recommend checking that one out or listening to the audiobook of it, and it will break down step by step. But so I can tell you some of the highlights if that would help.
Yeah, please, would love.
The first thing about setting boundaries is to set it very clearly, to communicate the want or the thing you don't want, the thing you expect very clearly. And you have to do it with a little bit of assertiveness, which I know for us people pleasers can be hard. But that assertiveness says, I'm serious about it, right?
Yeah.
And the next thing to know about setting that boundary when you communicate it is that not you might receive pushback, you will. Like that boundary will be tested. And so your job is to reinforce your boundary whenever it's tested.
Which can be super scary.
Oh my gosh.
Like
I mean it. To say I mean it, right? For people pleasers and for many people is really hard, and you can feel a lot of guilt about having to say I mean this. And that for me is the hardest part of setting boundaries, is dealing with the discomfort of it. I hate it. It's so uncomfortable. It makes my skin crawl sometimes. It's uncomfortable. And that's the big part of setting boundaries. That's the big work. Can I sit with the discomfort now between us that I created because I have to for my well-being?
I'm already like, ooh.
Yeah, right.
yeah. I'm like, should we all read this book?
I am going to read
I was
this
like,
book for
audiobook,
sure.
like while we're driving.
If you're subscribed to the newsletter, I'm going to put the book in the newsletter, a link to it if you want to purchase it.
Yeah.
Okay, so when you're living at home, boundaries are really hard because sometimes they're physical boundaries. You know, it's like I need space, or I need to like, you know, do stuff. When you're not at home, it's a whole different ballgame. It's not easier, I wouldn't say. I have lots of boundaries with my family. I have a side of my family that I still talk to, and a side of my family that I came out to, because I had already estranged probably 60% of my family before that for other reasons that involved Trump and feminism and religion. And so I had already estranged a lot of my family. I don't even talk to them because they just push my boundaries. They're extremely mean. It's the bottom. That's the bottom of it. And I always tell people, like, nobody talks to me as rudely except for my mom and my sister and my grandmother, like in like my entire side of that family, who are all very I grew up Catholic, but so they're deeply Catholic. My boundaries are like all or nothing. And so I go, you get a couple times to insult me that I will like write off and be extremely rude and take advantage of me. But once like you've pushed enough buttons, like I'm never talking to you again until you go to therapy. And that's one boundary that I have. Actually, that's two, with two members of my family. I say, go to therapy and I need an apology. And once you do that, you can call me. It's hard for me to have people in my life who don't respect me. And so I just kind of go, okay, we're not friends anymore. Even if you're family, we're not friends anymore. We're not talking anymore. And I think I never really learned how to set boundaries that were in the gray zone.
Yeah, I think everyone has a different tolerance level, right? So I'm thinking about some of the ways that my wife stayed connected with some folks in our life who were non-affirming, and a lot of folks in her family that I could not tolerate. Like, I wouldn't be able to do the same thing that she was willing to do, which she was willing to have like hard conversations and hear difficult things from her family members, and even have them not show up to our wedding, right? We both had a few family members not show up to our wedding, and she could tolerate having those hard conversations, and that is the kind of person that she is. That is not me, right? I can't tolerate, especially at that time. It was so hurtful to me. I couldn't tolerate having those conversations. So part of the way that I had boundaries is I couldn't offer as much closeness to those family members, kind of like what you're talking about, right? And I stayed in contact with them, but the closeness that I once had with them just couldn't be there because it wasn't emotionally safe for me to do so. And so sometimes it looks like that. Sometimes it looks like time spent. Like, I can't spend time with you if you're saying harmful, transphobic, or homophobic things to me. It could even be no contact, where it's like, I can't tolerate having you in my life at all because you are so harmful to me. And that's really sad, and it's really hard, and it makes me sad to think about it. But sometimes that is the way that we have to move forward.
Yeah, like I had to set one with my parents because every time I called them for like years, the only topic of conversation would be, don't go to hell. Why are you doing this to us? Like, it would just be a lot of like damnation talk. And I finally had to say, if you talk to me this way one more, I have a harder time setting boundaries, especially with my family, because I love them so much. They were such a positive part of my life for so long that it's hard to reconcile the two sides. But I had to say, if you bring this up to me one more time, I'm not speaking to you ever again. And thankfully, they have upheld that. But then I recently had to also tell them, until my queerness is okay with you, I'm no longer coming home.
Yeah.
And so I'll still get questions of like, we miss you. Where are you? Come home. And I'm trying to get better at being like, I'm not coming home. I'm having to repeat it. Like, I'm not coming home because I don't want to. I'm coming home. I'm not coming home because you have made this an unsafe space for me as who I am now. And that's hard for me to tell them that. It's very emotional. I have to get very prepared. I have to have Bob's Burgers on after. That's my soother. And I have to be like, all right, here we go. I have to remind you that this is my boundary. And yeah, and it can just look so different because we have very different ways of setting boundaries and very different tolerance levels for it, where I'll still talk to my parents, but until they cross that, I have to say no. And it's like, but it's always a negotiation, I feel like. And sometimes my tolerance on some days changes, where I'm like, actually, I don't have space for that anymore. Like, I have to go hardcore. And it's really fascinating to have to like be in touch with yourself to feel those ebbs and flows, you know?
Yes. There is sort of a having to mindfully be present with yourself and knowing when you can have rebridge those relationships and connect with those folks and when you don't have the ability to or the safety to. And it can be a lot easier when you are really independent, living on your own. Your well-being is not really at risk by being in contact with those folks. But it can change over time. It has for me. I have a family member who I'm still in connection with, but our relationship really suffered because that family member was steeped in religion and had even asked me, not to marry the person I was going to marry. And so there was some deep hurt there. But we've stayed in connection and we're working on rebuilding our relationship. And this person has really grown and changed and has some new perspectives and understandings of queerness. And I want to say that there is some hope that that can happen and that people can change. And I see it happen in my office every single day. And not everyone will, but sometimes family members will change and they will grow.
How do you know that they are a relationship that you should invest in? Like how do you know that somebody can change? Like how do you know when to cut them off versus invest in
that hope?
Yeah.
You can't know. That's a hard truth is, and I'll caveat that with there could be some things to look for. But you can't know. It could take years. It could never happen. It could happen in a year. It could happen in 20. So it's impossible to know 100%. But some things that I would look for is that person able to have some humility in conversation with you and curiosity instead of just defensiveness, right? And I might also look for, does that person respect your boundaries? Are they working at respecting your boundaries? Like the boundary you set, Allison, and your parents were like, okay, we're going to lose our connection with our kiddo if we don't respect this boundary. And so they have. So that's a good sign to me that boundaries are respected.
Yeah, and I think something that I think about too is also like tapping into how you're feeling with that relationship. Because at one point, I remember I told Amanda this, and I was like, everyone in my life, like other people, would step up and hold the hope for me when in the periods when I couldn't. So there was a period where I was like, I have no faith that this could change. So I had to let that go. And I had sweet friends and Amanda and other people were like, we'll hold on to that hope for you so you don't have to. And then when I was ready to pick it back up, I was ready to pick it back up. And now I'm seeing some changes happening. And I'm like, okay, maybe I can hold on to a little bit of this again. And maybe this is something I can go forward with again. But also kind of giving myself the space to know that if that goes away, that's okay. Because it's hard.
I think that's a good point. Our community is really important in this process. One, because some of them have been through it, right? And so they can offer encouragement and hold your grief with you because they've been there before, right? And just getting to talk it out and make those decisions, have a soundboard for those decisions, I think that's really helpful too. So I recommend community for sure. And if you don't have a solid community, you can seek out a healing practitioner or someone who's willing to sit with you and talk with you through it.
Yeah, because that's a complication that like we find in other episodes. Like, well, but sometimes making friends is really hard, especially maybe if you're not in a space where you feel like that's possible. So yeah, I think like finding somebody like a practitioner, that's like a very valid way to go.
And finding a queer practitioner also is like incredibly helpful. I have seen not queer practitioners and queer practitioners, and it's like night and day because I don't feel like I have to explain my queerness. It's a funny tangent. I had a not a therapist but a counselor of sorts be like, yeah, okay, I told her that I was queer, and she responded by being like, oh yeah, we can totally like work through that to get you back to being straight. And I was like, okay. I was like,
No.
yeah, that was a very rare case, but I was like, okay, we are not meant to work together. And so, but yeah, like I am working with a therapist now, the first person who's ever been queer, and it's just like incredible to feel like they understand empathetically what I'm going through. So
Yes, I want to say I'm sad to say I've had a similar experience to you. Not quite conversion therapy, but something similar, right? And it is so harmful to our sense of self, and we have to pick up the pieces and repair that too. Oh my goodness, so I totally agree that it's helpful to find someone who at the least is affirming, but really cool if they have a shared identity with you, that's so helpful. You don't have to explain things as much.
Oh yeah, the not having to educate and just to be able to say, even like when it comes to just like language, like I was telling Amanda, I was like, I don't want to have to explain to my therapist what U-hauling is, like just
Yeah.
kind of down to that. Like if I say things like that, like it's just so nice to have somebody who goes, oh yeah, I get you,
Yes.
and just that freedom in that space, it just lets you breathe. Okay, we have another question for you, which is I mean, even if it's like something to say or tools, like when your family member says, I love you, I just don't love the queer part of you, or
like-
the love the sinner, hate the sin mentality, and like how people can combat that.
Immediately, I want to say fuck you.
yeah,
Yes.
yeah.
Right. And I'm somewhat joking, but not fully, because I think it's important to convey your pain and to not protect your family member from the harm that they're causing you.
There we go. Nice.
Yeah.
That's like liberating.
That's super.
Yeah.
Because I went through, and I'm still kind of going through it. I felt like so silly because whenever my family would be doing stuff to me, I would cry and I would really show the pain. And I started feeling, I was like, oh, that's undermining my voice. It's undermining what I'm trying to say. But now I'm like, no, I think they have to see if I'm feeling the pain, they need to see it.
Yes.
I
think I can be avoidant sometimes when it comes to conflict. And a lot of the time I would suffer silently or on my own or maybe with my partner. But I realized like, hey, I'm actually like making this better for the person who's harming me. They don't know like how devastated I am and that this is actually going to cause harm, not just to me, but to our connection and our relationship.
And they don't deserve for you to make it easier.
They don't, right? This is a natural consequence to how they're choosing to relate to you.
This is radicalizing me.
Yeah.
My wheels are like, I'm like, wait a minute. Wait, because my younger sister and I had this moment where she basically told me I'm not allowed to come home anymore. Like, I'm not welcome. And then in a follow-up conversation, she had told me, she said, I believe that your desire for our acceptance is you admitting that what you're doing is wrong.
Wow.
And I was like, what is happening here? And how I can't even, because like it was by me showing her my pain. I was crying and I was like, I don't understand. Like, I've been through years of pain with you guys. This is how you've hurt me. I just want you to love me. I want you to love all of me. And I don't have to hide when I come home. And I don't want, I want to be able to come here and feel safe. And she was like, I think this is coming from you knowing that what you're doing is wrong. And I'm like, how did we get here? Like, what?
But
Like,
it's crazy the things that religious people or people deeply steeped in conservatism, is that even a word? But like will justify anything that you do to prove a narrative that's in their head. And so I love the like, well, fuck you, right?
I know, I
like,
wish I would have said that. Because I think I was too nice after that. I was like, that's not what's happening. And then I was like, I turned off my tears and I was like, no. But I wish I was like, fuck off.
Right. We are socialized to defer. And I want to notice that inclination or that compelling feeling to defer to our non affirming family members, to be gentle with them or patient. And, you know, everyone has a different tolerance level. So maybe that's okay for some people, but we don't actually have to be patient with them. And I'm going to couch this in figure out what's safe for you. That's always the first thing. But you can convey your pain. And then if you need to set a boundary about how this person is talking to you, if it's harmful the way that they're talking to you, I would say set a boundary too.
We're looping it back to you get the love the sinner, hate the sin thing. What do you think? Like, what tools can somebody use? Setting boundaries is one of them.
Okay, so I would say if you're in the home and your resources are dependent on these people, it's a little more challenging. What you can do is set boundaries around time spent, around topics of conversation. It's like, I'm not willing to talk about my gender and sexuality with you.
Yeah.
Right? Or what you did with your family, like, please don't bring this topic up with me again. I think that's one way that you can deal with it when you're in the home. It's a little tricky because you live together, but you can stop conversations. I'm not willing to talk about this. I'm going to my room, or I'm going out. I'm going for a walk. So those are some ways when you're in the home with your non-affirming family members. It's so much easier when you don't live with them because you can control so much time spent with them, communication, topics of conversation. You have more of a say as to what you can restrict.
Because it feels a little easier just to hang up the phone.
Yeah.
You know? Yeah.
It is easier.
It is. You just go, yeah, for sure. Curious about how folks can support themselves through like this grief of losing a version of their family, and also like maybe the love that's still there and that complicated balance.
Grief is just a part of being human, right? We will all experience it. The tricky thing about this kind of grief is that these people are probably not dead. So there's no like that known factor or the trajectory of grief. It's like so uncertain. And I've seen this with my loved ones, with my clients. Sometimes when a complicated relationship, that person passes away, there's a sense of relief. Like, I no longer have to wonder if I could have a healthy relationship with them. So it's tricky because they're still alive and kicking, and you have to wonder. You have that uncertainty. Unless you go complete no contact, you have that uncertainty. So I think ways to deal with grief and that kind of grief are many. But for me, it starts with just writing down what I'm grieving. And whether it's writing it down, saying it out loud to myself or to someone else, this is what I've lost. And I'm making a note of it. And from there, I know it's going to sound cheesy, but feel your feelings about it. What happens when we don't release our emotion is it stays stuck with us. So if you can find a safe place, even if it's just with yourself, or maybe a partner or a therapist or a good friend, feel what you're feeling and let it move through your nervous system instead of getting stuck.
It's super resonant with me. When I like made that boundary with my mom, that was years and years and years ago. And I'm still dealing with the grief of like, oh, I don't have a mom. Like, I don't have someone that I can call up and ask about, like, why did you decide to have kids? What was it like to be pregnant? Like, all of these things that me as like a birth in a birthing body, I have lots of questions that I feel like only my mom could answer. And so I do grieve a lot with that complicated family situation, because it's like I'm losing a mentor as well. And over the years I have been like, oh, I'll just find somebody else. Um and ultimately, like, I mean, I'm still telling the story as a question to you, but like ultimately the only solution that I really found is like I need to kind of like mother myself, and I need to kind of stand on my own 2 feet and realize that, like, even if she did come to me, even if I did have her in my life, I wouldn't trust her. I wouldn't trust her advice. And so I trust my research and the stories. Like, I have access to the internet, so I've done tons of research around like motherhood and stuff like that. But um yeah, I guess the question that I have around that is like, there's a very special kind of hole in your heart when you lose a, like, not lose in like a death sense, but like when you lose somebody in your life because of your identity. There's like a special kind of grief, and like, how do you move through that?
You will not replace that person one to one, right? It's not going to feel exactly the same. What I want to notice is what's on the other side of that. And I'll come back to the grief in just a moment. I never thought I would have such a liberated, like joyful, like community filled, celebratory existence when I was in that place, right? And so, in a way, we say goodbye to one part of our existence and one way of relating to people in order to say welcome to what awaits us when we get to be our most authentic selves and what we can experience. Liberated joy, people who celebrate who you are, who go beyond affirming, right? So I know that's not easy to hear, and it's not one-to-one, but we can have that. And I think y'all seem to have some of that, and I feel like I do too. When it comes to the grief part, I really love the Center for Body Trust. That's a big part of the work that I do. I didn't mention that before, but helping people heal their relationships with their bodies, which is really important for queer folks and trans folks. And they talk about grief in the book, and they talk about memorializing what we've lost. And I really like that idea that we might be able to create some like physical representation of our loss. And maybe for some people, it might look like an altar that commemorates what we've lost. It might look like an album. It might look like a letter to that person. It might look like another kind of ritual that involves nature. But I think that physical act of expressing our grief is really important too.
I wrote a book.
You did?
Yeah, it's behind us. I wrote because I had to do something with the grief that I had, because it was taking over. I wasn't able to I spent a period of my life where I wasn't able to feel happy for other people with happier experiences. Like, I just felt so much pain my whole life. I just felt I was looking through a lens of pain and through a lens of loss. Because when I came out, my parents said that I had died. So they were like, I told them, and they were like, it's like, you've died. And even now, and it's been years. I came out in 2018-ish. And I noticed that like they would start talking about me, and they still do, in a past tense. We miss our Allie, as if I'm alive but I'm dead. And I couldn't let go of that pain. And I'm artistic, I'm theatrical, and I really was like, I have to use how my soul communicates to just release this and to give it a spot to live, so it doesn't live in my body anymore. Because I was like, I love feeling joy and I love my happiness, and this is it's getting in the way. So I wrote a book,
Wow.
and it's all poems about like what I was going through when I was going through it. And now it's great because it feels like that's a spot that it feels like my altar. It feels like my memorial piece where I'm able to be like, we can grieve here. And that just helped. So I feel like once I had it done, I felt like I could breathe again. And I was like, oh, and I just felt like I felt like the glasses that I had on got like lifted a little bit.
Yeah.
And so yeah, I can just be like that. To me, I'm like, if you need an altar, if you need a letter, if you need anything, a special tree that you go sit under, it helped change my life, and it really helped me release, which was awesome.
That's so beautiful. I really want to read your book.
Yeah, please.
I think that's another piece for me too, reading other people's stories, hearing words that really resonate with your experience.
Andrea
can be a
Gibson.
way- Yes.
So good. Lord of the Butterflies.
Yeah.
I read that book when I was coming out, like in the middle of it, and I would just sit in my teeny tiny apartment room. Like you could spread my arms and you could touch each wall. And I would sit there with my giant like bucket of goldfish crackers and my pillows, and I would just read it and cry.
Yeah.
It's so good. Like, yeah, I think storytelling is really powerful.
It's powerful. And if you can't find your own words, you can read someone else's.
Yep. Being able to find, oh goodness, it was like one of their poems, and it like weaved in like religious allegory and like also falling in love for the first time. And I was like, and I felt so seen.
Yeah.
I was like, thank you for seeing me and being able to speak in a way that I just can't right now.
Oh, that's beautiful.
Yeah,
And
Andrea
your
Gibson,
own
I love you.
book came out of it.
Yeah. It's just like, I think sometimes when we think about queer grief, we think of it as like it's a stopper, and it's something that, I don't know, I felt like I saw myself. I felt like I saw it as like my biggest, I don't even know what I'm trying to say, but I saw it as something that like I was always going to have to ram my head into, and that it was never something I was going to get through to the other side, that I was just going to have to hold hands with grief, and it was just always going to have to whisper in my ear. So I was prepared. I was like, if I get married, my family won't be here. And I could only see my wedding in that context. I could only see building a family in the context of the grief that I was coming from. If I have a queer family, I only saw it as my family's going to hate this, rather than here's the joy that we've built together, and this is healing the universe. Like queer joy heals the universe.
Yeah.
And so like reading other people's stories and being able to write down my own, I was like, okay, grief is here, but it doesn't have to be guiding me.
Right. Grief is something that will stay with us, but it doesn't have to be the leader of our lives.
Yeah, exactly. And that's how it felt. It felt for years that it was just like always one step ahead of me. And that's how I just saw life through everything. I would see my friends enter into relationships, or I would enter into one, and all my grief was telling me was, if it's not perfect, your family won't accept you. Rather than being able to be present and be like, wow, I'm loving this relationship in this moment. What a beautiful thing I've built.
What I'm hearing through this whole conversation is that the time that we spend hanging on to the people who are like unaffirming, don't see us, don't respect us, are mean, like actively mean to us, the time that we spend trying to heal those relationships, try to make them understand us, try to make them see us, is time that takes away from time you can be investing in your joy. Like thinking about, okay, I lost a family member and they're no longer in my life. There's a big hole, but that hole is just space that can be filled with more relationships that are affirming. And I think I've said this on the podcast before. Something that was super impactful for me was like when you lose a friend, it can be applied to family members. When you lose anybody in your life, it's just space for more people who are going to love you, right? If you fill your heart with space for people who don't love all of you, you're keeping yourself from the love that people who do love you can give you. And so I think from what I'm hearing from what you said, Celia, and what from you said, Allison, is that we need to move through grief with love and focus on the things that you do have, the love that people are having, and like showing up for you and be on that side of the fence instead of the side of the fence of this is what I lost, this is what could be.
It's making me think of Sonya Renee Taylor. Do y'all know her?
No.
Oh my God. She wrote a book called The Body is Not an Apology. And
Oh my God.
it's so good. It's a short read. I really recommend it.
You're just expanding our library. We're very
Yes.
excited.
I'm sorry about
No,
that.
don't ever apologize.
No,
This
yeah.
is so good.
But in the first chapter, she talks about an interaction she had with a friend where she arrived at that understanding in a conversation they were having that she had been sort of living as an apology of taking up too much space, of being too big, or of being too black, or of being too fill in the blank, right? For us, being too queer, or being too gender diverse, and realized that the body is not an apology. I don't actually have to live in a state of deference or apology about who I am. And I can pursue this thing called radical self-love, where I love who I am and walk towards liberation in all of my decisions. And I think that's part of what's coming to mind with what you're talking about, Amanda, is it is grief and it is hard and heavy. And on the other side of that, we are sort of lightened up or released into this ability to pursue connections, relationships, experiences that are truly affirming of who we are and allow us to love all of who we are.
Our last two questions for you are what do you wish someone would have told you when you were first navigating all this?
Damn, that's hard. I think one thing that comes to mind is avoidance will not keep you safe, because I'm more of an avoidant person. And so while I think I thought at first, like, my silence, me taking space was the thing I needed to do, I'm noticing now, many years later, as I'm picking up the pieces, that not conveying my pain, like, actually stunted my process of healing with certain family members. And I'm trying to take accountability for that. But it happened. So I would have loved to hear that, someone encouraging me to convey my pain and speak my truth, and to be honest about what I was experiencing. And the other part that I wish someone would have told me was, like, how fucking fantastic life is going to be on the other side of this. And yes, it's hard. Like, I'm not pretending it's not. I mean, the world is really hard right now. We're in a poly crisis. And life is just hard in general. But, like, it's also fantastic. And living in my most authentic self and helping other people to do the same, I just am grateful, and I celebrate that for myself and for the potential futures of others who are in the process.
Oh,
Damn.
beautiful.
So beautiful.
We had we keep a theme that we've noticed that keeps coming up that I love, which is just like this queer joy, and you have a queer life is a beautiful life, and it's so full of so many wonderful things. And I just feel like sometimes, especially when people enter into this situation, like with a complicated family, it doesn't feel like that's possible. And it is. I love it. Okay, what's one piece of encouragement or hope you want to leave our listeners with?
Yeah, I think it's some of the same, is that there could be a reality for you where you're living a life that's really authentic, and that the people around you will love your authentic self. And so why not pursue that? Yeah, I think celebrate your own queerness. And if you're in a space where it's not safe to be out loud about who you are, I think there are ways where you can pursue that celebration personally, internally. And my encouragement would be to start there. If you can't do it out loud just yet, do it within yourself.
That's so sweet. I don't know why the first image I had in my brain was like, throw yourself a little like queer dance party in your room.
Yeah. Oh my gosh.
You know?
Read queer books, like watch queer shit, and throw yourself a queer dance party in your room.
Do it. Wear the clothes that you feel good in.
Even if it's just socks.
Even if it's just socks.
Wear fun socks. Wear a queer celebration.
Do it.
Yes.
If you want only your pizza socks, only pizza socks.
I love this.
Okay, are you ready? We're going to transition into our
Yeah,
game, little tone
let's
shift.
see.
Well, okay, I want to acknowledge like how incredibly beautiful this episode has been. And so the reason why we end our episodes with a little game or something kind of silly is because these topics are so heavy. And so we don't like, I feel like if I just ended this episode, I'd be like, oh, I need to go think a lot. And we do want you to think a lot and like go like read these books, make these notes, go throw yourself a queer dance party, but also like remember that things are silly.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
That with the heaviness can come giggles.
Yes,
Yeah.
exactly. Okay, so this game is called Is It Sapphic and Why? And right before you came, Allison and I just like spitballed random shit. So we're just gonna ask you like, is this Sapphic? Or which one is more Sapphic? And like, tell us why you think this.
Okay, let's see.
Okay, our first one, drum roll, is which is more Sapphic, coffee or tea?
I think tea for sure. Okay, the reason I think tea, so when I think Sapphic, I think of like divine feminine energy that's part of it sometimes, or you know what is all encompassed with that. And I feel like tea is like soothing and gentle and receptive, and like it helps me ponder and calm down. So that feels really Sapphic to me.
I love it.
As Amanda sips her tea.
I know.
She goes, I have chamomile tea right here.
Pinky out.
Yeah.
And even for our like trans masc listeners, I feel like tea, to your point, has this like very like, I work in a university and I wear brown, what is it? What are they
like
called?
tweed.
Like, tweed pants, and I just sit
I want
in
a
my
tweed
tea,
suit so bad.
and it's just like like mellow and chill and intelligent and cozy. I love that.
But I also feel like tea for me is when I also like, it's so imagination activating.
Yeah.
Like I'm often drinking tea when I'm reading books and when I'm watching movies. And like, there's also something really, like I was literally just thinking, like as I was making your tea for this episode, I was like, how cool is it that somebody was like, look at these pretty flowers. What if we put them in water? Like,
it's so random.
And I was like, what radical thinking? Like, I love this. And yeah, I feel like tea is so Sapphic.
The second one is Elmer's glue. Is it Sapphic and why?
Elmer's glue.
If you're watching on YouTube, you have to see her face.
Okay.
The thinking.
I mean, my brain goes dirty. I'm just like, yes, it could be.
Okay, tell me why.
I don't know if it's appropriate for the show,
Do
but
it.
I mean, it definitely makes me feel a little sexy when I think about it. Also, I think there's something about Sapphic relationships. Like we can get really stuck together in like this really bonded way. And so maybe that's a stereotype, but I think that was my experience.
I love it. Who needs a U-Haul when you have Elmer's glue lesbians?
We are
Like-
Elmer's glue together.
It's the new thing. We're going to coin this phrase. Our next one is an Apple TV remote.
Oh, that feels like conflict to me. It could be. I don't know about that one. I'm
love
just
it.
like fighting over what you want to watch. That's what comes to
Pretty
mind.
straight.
Okay, yeah. Yeah, that feels heterosexual to me.
It does.
What do you mean you don't want to watch the queer girls kiss on TV? That's very straight coded. Yeah.
That's so funny. Okay, our final one for you is
The smell of fresh cut grass.
Oh, yes, Sapphic. I think anything could be, I guess, but I'm just imagining my wife mow the lawn. Thank you, wife.
There we go. We
Absolutely.
love
Let me
it.
let me give you a little kiss after you do that.
Yeah, there we go.
Yeah,
Come on,
definitely
Sapphic
Sapphic.
lawn work. Amazing. Okay, so just to wrap it up, where can listeners find you again? Do you have social media? What's your practice name? All that good stuff.
The easiest place to find me is my website, sanctuarycounselingaustin.com. And so if you fill out my contact form, I will email you and get in touch with you, and we can have like a 20-minute chat, virtual chat for free. So that's a good place to find
For
me.
free.
For free.
20 free minutes.
Yes,
Y'all
20
get on it
minutes.
if you need it.
And so that's a really good way to find me. I have social media, but it's not much. So you can look at it if you want to. There's not much there, but I do have an Instagram account. I think it's Sanctuary Counseling ATX. That you can find me there.
And for people who aren't from Austin, Texas, ATX is ATX, Austin, Texas.
Good
Cool.
reminder. Yeah. And I want to just maybe make a small note that there are some really great accessible therapy platforms out there too. If you can't see me and if you can't work with the therapist in my practice, there's OutYouth, there's Waterloo Counseling, and there's Capital Area Counseling. And those three will offer like a deep sliding scale if it doesn't feel accessible to work with me. There's also some really cool scholarships out there for therapy. So there's To Write Love on Her Arms is one scholarship. And I think inclusivetherapist.com, they also have a scholarship for BIPOC folks.
Awesome.
So there are ways. And if you don't know how to find it, contact me and I can help you figure out what resource is best for you.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Yay. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for coming on.
Yeah.
You're
It's
welcome.
such a
It's
beautiful
such
episode.
a joy.
Yeah,
Oh,
we're just so glad. We just reached out to you randomly and we were like, "Hey, we have this podcast. We would love for you to come on." And so I appreciate your openness and your willingness to like try new things. This is your first ever podcast.
It
so
is.
you killed it. I'm
well,
honestly
I didn't
surprised.
know it'd be so deeply nourishing to talk to y'all. So this has just been a joy and a treat. Thank y'all for
Yay.
thinking of
Thank
me.
you.
Thank you. And to our listeners, thank you so much for joining us for another episode or your first episode. You have listened to an entire episode now, which means Spotify will let you, or wherever you're at, Apple Podcasts, Good Pods, wherever you're at, will now let you rate the show.
Do it.
So if you take 5 seconds right now, you can close the episode, go to the rating, and you just click 5 stars. And we will be so appreciative of you. We are very new right now. This is going to be podcast episode number 11. And so because we're so new, we're still getting the word out and we're trying and dedicating our lives to our passion of helping the Sapphic community heal and figure out how to live life, because shit's hard when you're Sapphic. It's pretty complicated. And so yeah, we made this podcast because being Sapphic should be simple. So simply Sapphic. So thank you for joining us for another episode. We love you. We see you. We appreciate you. And we'll see you in our next episode.
Have a happy queer life.
Have a happy queer life.
Bye, y'all.
Thanks for tuning in.
Be sure to subscribe, follow us on social media,
And share episodes with your friends.
see you next time.